Hi, everybody. Welcome to Phil and Dave's Excellent Adventures. Just Dave here. Today we are talking about the movie Tar. This is going to be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the movie yet and you are concerned about spoilers, I would suggest you go ahead and watch the movie first before you watch this review. Tar is a movie starring Cate Blanchett about a woman who is poised to become the first female orchestra conductor in the history of the German orchestra that she's conducting. I believe it's in Dresden, maybe somewhere in Germany. So, as far as what I liked about the movie, overall the cast was great. Cate Blanchett as Lydia Tár was amazing. Mark Strong is in there as well. He's always good. Noémie Merlant plays her wife, I suppose. Well, yes, her wife. Nina Haas is her assistant. Actually, I've got that wrong. Noémie Merlant is her assistant, and Nina Haas is her wife. And then Sophie Kauer as the young Russian cellist. There's overall the performances are all really solid in this movie, and I really liked them a lot. The story I thought was very interesting. I went into this movie not really knowing what it was about. I didn't know if it was a biography about an actual conductor who was unfamiliar with, or if it was a fiction, a work of fiction, or really what the story was or what was going on. And I really liked it. I think the story really ends up being, at least in my opinion, is about sort of a sociopath or a psychopath. I'm not sure. About a narcissist, someone who is in a position of power and who's basically at the heights, the sort of climax of her entire career, and then how it all falls apart based on her terrible decisions and the way that she treats people. And I found it really fascinating. Like I said, didn't know going into it exactly what it was going to be. I expected it to be more of just a sort of an examination of what it's like to be a woman in this sort of male-dominated world, and there really wasn't much of that. There was a little bit, but most of it really had to do with this person and her actions. And I feel like her gender didn't really matter as much. That being said, I do think this movie is more interesting with a woman in the lead than it would have been with a man, just because I feel like with a man, this is a story I've seen before, and it's not as surprising or interesting for me seeing it. The story that's a very kind of something I could definitely see happening with a male character, but with a female protagonist, made it more interesting to me and more entertaining, really. So other than that, I really like the sound design in this movie. There's a lot of cool stuff going on with the way the kind of music comes in and affects the mood, and they throw in things like just like a timer kind of going off, or there's like screaming and stuff. And then overall, the music was all really good too. I'm not a huge fan of classical music, and I can't say I necessarily identified everything they played, but all the music was great, and it was really cool to hear. And it actually made me kind of want to get more into classical music. There are a lot of psychological aspects to the movie. Like I said, there's parts where she's just running in the woods and she hears screaming and she stops and she can't tell where it's coming from. And I couldn't tell if it was really happening or not. It was just in her head or what was going on with that. There's stuff that she finds where people move her stuff or hide her stuff, or things get broken, or someone does, carve something in, and she's trying to figure out what's going on. Is somebody messing with her? And at some point, I kind of thought that's maybe what the movie was going to be, but it really wasn't. And I think what I liked a lot about it is that things aren't really explained in the movie. It's not. I feel like a lot of movies feel the need to really just explain everything just to make sure that everyone gets it. In this movie, I felt like kind of let you figure stuff out on your own. There's a lot of references to composers and conductors and musical people that some people may know, but I didn't know all of them. But you can kind of get from context what they're talking about and what they mean. And then there's a lot of stuff too, where like toward the end of the movie, at some point she's in a cab. They don't really say where she is, but you see the cab's got New York license plates, and from that and other context clues, you can maybe infer that she's in Long Island. At some point, there's this guy who comes in. She's at her family home. You can again tell that from the pictures on the wall and the awards and the way that things are arranged and everything. And a guy shows up, and I assume it was her brother. I am not entirely sure because he says something like, "Oh, mom said you were going to be here." But even their interaction, their relationship, the way that he sort of treats her, I feel like a lot of movies would have felt the need to, in that cab scene, say like she would be talking to the cab driver, or she'd be on the phone and she'd be like, "Oh, I can't believe I'm going back to my childhood home in Staten Island." And then like her brother would show up and be like, "Hey sis, it's me, your brother," because they always write this terrible expository dialogue like that. And I feel like this movie didn't do that. It was smart enough to be like, yeah, we don't need to say. And honestly, it doesn't matter if he's her brother or not. It doesn't matter where she is, You just need to know she's in a different place than she was initially at the beginning of the movie. Other than that, I also like, and at the end too, they do a thing where they show her in an Asian country and they never really say what country it is. And again, from context, you might be able to figure it out. I couldn't necessarily nail it down other than somewhere in Southeast Asia. But I really like that. And other than that, there's also some humor in this movie. I didn't really notice it so much toward the beginning, and maybe there is some kind of subtle stuff, but toward the end, there's a couple pretty funny moments. There's a scene where her neighbors are trying to sell their apartment, and they ask her if she can keep it down, and she initially takes it as like they like her music because she's a very famous composer, and why wouldn't they? But they're like, no, we want you to keep it down so we can show the house to other people. And then she comes out with like an accordion and just like singing this ridiculous song about how like she hates them and they should move in and their mother was terrible or something. And it was pretty good. I like that. And there's a part two toward the end where she's in the Asian country and she wants to go for a swim. And the guy's like, well, you can't. There's alligators here. And she's like, I didn't think they'd be this far inland. And he goes, they came from a Marlon Brando movie. And I don't know, I just thought that was really funny because it's probably true. I actually think Apocalypse Now was filmed in the Philippines, and I think they did actually let some alligators loose there, and they probably are actually probably still in the population. So is that supposed to be the Philippines? I don't know, maybe. As far as what I didn't like about the movie, not much really. The movie is a little long. It's over 2 hours. I think it's 2.5 or something like that, 2:38. And it's a little long, but I honestly, it didn't bother me that much, and there's not much I would really cut about it. I think it was pretty much every scene that's in there is in there for a reason, and it builds to the next scene. It sort of shows you where she is and the way that people treat her and the way that she's respected, and then you see her sort of slow downfall, and as the choices that she made kind of add up to everything that happens to her. Liked it a lot. And then the ending, I think, again, I liked the ending, but it was a little abrupt. It was just a little like, okay, so that's the end. Okay, fair enough. And it said everything I needed to say. I saw where she was. Basically, at the ending, after becoming this famous conductor who was about to become, the first female conductor in this orchestra, she's now relegated to performing the live orchestra for a Monster Hunter cosplay kind of thing in a theater in Southeast Asia. So I'm sure for someone like her, that's a fate worse than death. But yeah, I still feel like I like the ending, but I feel like maybe I would have liked just a little bit more. Can't say what exactly, but yeah. Other than that, the movie is directed by Todd Field, who is a pretty well-known and respected director. I have not really seen his movies, though. This is the first one that I've seen. His last movie was Little Children, which was quite a few years ago, and I remember hearing about it, and I remember hearing Jackie Earle Haley was great in it, but I haven't watched the movie. And another movie made called In the Bedroom, which sounds interesting. It's got Marissa Tomei in there, and I like her a lot, and Nick Thune. So I feel like I'm going to want to go back and check out those other movies because I probably should have watched them. And yeah, they seem he's a good filmmaker, and so I want to see more from him. He also wrote this, and I like that a lot. And I like the idea that a man did this story about a woman, and I feel like he did it in a pretty good way. That being said, I'm not a woman, so hey, if you are and you think it was false or untrue, please let me know. Oh, there's a massage scene toward the end that I have to admit, I don't know if I necessarily understood it because she's in this Asian country and she wants to get a massage because her neck hurts, I think. And so she goes to find someone to do it, and they direct her to this room where there's just a bunch of Asian women sitting there, and she goes, well, pick one, whichever one you want. And one of them sort of looks up at her, and she's sitting in the same position that the young Russian cellist was sitting in. And so I assume, and then she sort of gets upset and emotional and like runs outside and throws up. So I assume this was supposed to be sort of her coming to terms with sort of the way that she treats people and sort of the transactional way that she looks at people, and being faced with this was just too much for her or something, which is fine. But I guess I didn't necessarily understand why she had reached that point. I mean, enough happened to her, but to me, in my head, she was still just sort of this transactional kind of person who wouldn't really have an issue with that. So I guess it's good that she's maturing or something, but I don't know. I guess I think I just didn't quite get that. And I'm sure there's probably more to it, and it's probably smarter than I realized. I didn't get it. So if you can explain it to me, please let me know. They do a thing where they don't show Krista's face. So Krista is a woman who she had sort of groomed, I suppose, and who had she'd gotten into this sort of relationship with, a sexual and a transactional kind of relationship with. And then when they broke it off, she ends up committing suicide. And then Cate Blanchett's Tár pretty much just blacklists her in the entire community, and tells people they shouldn't hire her and that she's unstable and all of this kind of stuff. And then you see her sort of doing with her assistant. I believe, at least it's pretty well implied, that they've kind of got a sexual relationship. And then you see her trying to do it with this young Russian cellist as well. So yeah, but they do this thing with Krista where they don't show her face really at all. Even when they show a picture of her, her hair is sort of covering her face. And even when they do these kind of flashbacks or dream sequences. Again, like her face is always covered. And I thought that was interesting. And actually, I did really like the way they did the dream sequences in this, because it was slightly different than what I'm used to. And I'm not a huge fan of dream sequences, but they did this thing where it looked very cool. You could easily tell it was a dream. It looked somewhat influenced by the Scarlett Johansson movie. What's it called? Under Her Skin, In Her Skin, that movie. A little bit like that, or like Stranger Things kind of does a similar thing with their kind of that liminal space, kind of netherworld, whatever you want to call it. I liked it a lot. The screams she hears in the woods are actually from the Blair Witch. They're from Heather Donahue from the Blair Witch. So I thought that was interesting. And like I said, the Brando references most likely reference to Apocalypse Now, which was filmed in the Philippines. And then Sophie Kauer, who plays the young Russian cellist, she's just a professional cellist who had never acted before. I guess she watched a bunch of videos on YouTube of Michael Caine, and that's how she learned to act. So, hey, can't go wrong with Michael Caine. Yeah, so that's it. At the end, like I said, it was Monster Hunter, which I didn't realize what that was at the time. I just thought, oh, it's a cosplay thing. It's a, but yeah, those are quite popular in that part of the world. So that was interesting as well. As far as my score on this movie, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I would say I don't think it was quite perfect, but it was really quite close, and I liked it a lot. I think it was really interesting. I want to see more from this director. Cate Blanchett's going to be an obvious shoo-in for an Oscar nomination, I think, for this. I don't think I liked it quite as much as Everything Everywhere All at Once. Not that I'm necessarily comparing movies, but I would say this is probably my second favorite movie of the year so far. So if you saw the movie, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great night. I will see you here again next week.